Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on lobbying for animals with an advanced degree in animal law, brought to you by the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Professor AJ Kreboth, adjunct law faculty at Lewis and Clark at the Center for Animal Law Studies, who teaches our legislation and lobbying course. And I am the director of the Animal Law Program, Reddy, and we're also joined by Professor Megan Senatori, who's the associate director of CALS. So just as a bit of an overview for our presentation today, after this welcome, Professor Kroboth will be discussing lobbying for animals, both the course and how sort of our graduates are doing this work is something that Professor Senatori will discuss. And in between that, I'll be offering an overview of our animal law program, both the in-person and online modalities, as well as our LLM option and our MSL option. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about CALS. Next slide. Our mission is to educate the next generation of animal law advocates and to advance animal protections through the law. We were founded in 2008, and we are located in Portland, Oregon, in the US. And we were a collaboration between Lewis and Clark, the law school, and the nonprofit Animal Legal Defense Fund. Since then, we've been a leader and pioneer in the field with several of our options, including our Animal Law Review journal and our Student Animal Legal Defense Fund, reaching back to the early 90s. As I mentioned, we have the very first journal, post to the very first journal dedicated exclusively to animal law, the Animal Law Review. We had the very first animal student organization, the Lewis and Clark Animal Legal Defense Fund student chapter. And we're also co-hosts of the world's longest running animal law conference. And this upcoming year's animal law conference is going to be held in October in Chicago, as well as online. In addition to those firsts, we also have the very first Dean of Animal Law, Dean Pamela Bice, who's the current sort of dean of the program. We also have an extensive animal law curriculum, and we'll talk about some of those courses later. And we also offer the very first advanced legal degree in animal law, the LLM, which is specific to JDs and holders of the LLB in law. So this is a degree sort of post JD and post LLB. Our other degree that we offer, specialized degree, is our MSL in animal law, and it's the very first of its kind in the US, and that degree is specific to non-lawyers. So we have a number of advocates in our program who are veterinarians, who are reporters, writers, general advocates, and again, who came to our program without a JD or LLB, but did have a bachelor's in another subject. We boast a really robust alumni network. As you can see here, we have alums in 35 plus countries. And so when you come to Lewis and Clark, whether it's their in-person or online program, you'll be connected not just with the students in your cohort, but also with our sort of very vast alumni who are doing work in a number of different countries. So with that said, I'll turn over to you, Professor Corbo.
Thanks so much, Professor Reddy. And hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you today about a course that just started in the online program this past semester. So we have run it once and it will be offered again in spring of 2026. Next slide, please. So you're probably sitting here thinking to yourself, all right, I'm thinking about getting this advanced degree in animal law, but I don't really know if I want to be a litigator. I might just want to be a lobbyist, or I consider myself an advocate in some way. And if that's going through your head at all, then I'm here to tell you you're in the right place. Just by way of a little personal background, I graduated law school let's just say some time ago now. And I started out in the private sector litigating and quickly realized that I wasn't fulfilled. I wanted to make more of an impact. And I started doing some contract work for my local animal shelter. And then I learned about the American Bar Association's TIPS Animal Law Committee. And next thing I knew I was looking for full-time positions in the field, and it kind of landed in my lap that I started out at Best Friends Animal Society as what was called a legislative attorney. And at that time, I was kind of cringing at the term lobbyist, but that is what I became, and that's what most of my career has centered around since that time. It's at three large animal welfare, animal protection, and animal rights organizations. So CALS is very special in that there are few law schools, and I'm not just talking animal law programs, but law schools in general that actually offer courses that are focused on governmental policy. And when I say governmental policy, what I mean is not just legislation, but also regulations or really any sort of policy that is not corporate. So this is that there is a governing body that has policies that impact their constituents. So many lobbyists, as you'll encounter in your careers, might have law degrees, but you certainly don't need one. You can be a very effective lobbyist. I'd even argue sometimes that some of the best lobbyists are not attorneys because they don't have kind of that devil's advocate in their brain that some of us attorneys have. So if you're thinking about this advanced degree or this course, what you will learn is general advocacy skills, some civics. This really teaches strategies that are not just specific to the US or to federal legislation, but really across the board as to how you can advocate to get a policy passed that will help or protect animals in some way. And we go through the entire process from start to finish. Next slide, please. So this is kind of some background about the first time the course was just offered. I was surprised as a first-time adjunct teacher that we had over 30 students. That was really exciting. In the first semester, it was offered, and the project that you will be doing throughout the entire semester is you choose a jurisdiction that you want to focus on through the whole semester. And we'll get into kind of what that cadence and what the modules actually look like in a moment. But in the course that we just completed, we had over 20 jurisdictions represented. Most of those, yes, were in the US, but not all of them were. We also had some international focuses ranging from the EU to Mexico to Brazil. And that allowed for a lot of really interesting learning, honestly, for myself as well, having never done advocacy work outside of the US. And we got to learn what the procedures look like in different jurisdictions, how they differed, learned some fun facts like where sentience is recognized for animals in certain places. And it allowed for some collaboration and some co-learning within the course that was really, I thought, one of the most valuable aspects of it. Although this course is what's called asynchronous, meaning all of the lectures from me are recorded beforehand and you're going to be reviewing them on your own time and participating in discussion boards, I really worked hard to make it as collaborative and interactive as possible. So what that might look like is ensuring that not only are you submitting your own discussion board responses, but you're also responding to other classmates' responses or submitting videos and then sharing feedback. And I really felt as though by the end of the semester, we had cultivated an online community where even though you might never meet these folks in the flesh or in real life, you're really getting to know one another and your work. As you can see here, we had a broad range of topics. We had folks who were coming to this course as veterinarians, some who were attorneys but were not doing any sort of animal protection work. And given the unique backgrounds, we had really unique topics for the project that folks focused on throughout the entire course. Next slide, please. So this is what the modules are for the course. And this is just to give you some nitty gritty of what to expect. I'll walk you through these in a little bit more detail if you are thinking about this. Um, you'll see I mentioned that there was some civics in the course, and that's what the first week we talk about the legislative process. Although I do center that a bit on the federal US process, we also have readings and assignments that touch on the European Parliament's process as well. In the next module, we talk about other ways in which governments govern. So that goes back to my explanation of what a policy is. We do not just work on legislation and bills, so to speak. We also talk about regulations, executive orders, things of that nature. And then we really start getting into what I think is the fun stuff, and that is storytelling, quite frankly. And that starts with the third module of defining the problem and really figuring out how do I frame what it is that I'm trying to do in a way that resonates with not just a lawyer, a lobbyist, a policymaker, but spoiler alert for the course, but with my grandma Bessie is what we call it. And students record videos of the grandma Bessie test. Will this make sense to grandma Bessie? If not, we need to simplify this. From there, we really start having a funnel of those proposed policies, figuring out how we're going to make a change. Are we going for incremental? Are we aiming big? What are the different strategy aspects of choosing something like that? Um, from there, we get into, again, more of that storytelling. I have a really great guest speaker from Mercy for Animals, their head of public relations, who joins us for that. And from there, we get more into the data and assembling, what is going to resonate with the policymaker, with the decision maker. Is that numbers? Is that dollars and cents? Figuring out what makes a policymaker or your decision maker for your problem tick. And I really want to underscore here that you're researching real legislators. So this is a pragmatic approach in that some students chose to go so far as to actually have phone calls with staffers who are currently working in the offices that they would be approaching were they to take this initiative forward after the course. From there, we have another guest speaker for Policy versus Politics from another animal welfare organization. And then we spend 2 weeks on legislative drafting. And this is kind of an art rather than a science. And again, it requires students to look at the legislative drafting guides for their specific jurisdictions, figure out how it should be written, what rules apply. From there, we go into media and public relations. That might seem a little odd that we're including that in a legislative and lobbying course, but I think as any of us, particularly living in the US right now, know, the media can really drive policies. And I think it would be an oversight not to include some sort of PR lesson throughout the course. And so we do that in the second to last module. And then finally, we have ethics and compliance because there are campaign finance rules, various regulations that we as lobbyists and advocates need to be aware of. And this is just a high level overview of that. So throughout all of the course, as I mentioned, it really is, I believe, as interactive as it can possibly be for an online asynchronous course. And that includes discussion boards, video submissions, assignments that are truly realistic. You will come away from this course with content and materials that you could use were you to carry an initiative forward. That will include one sheets, glossies, as they're sometimes called. It will include memorandums, the actual bill language, and that's been really fruitful for students to be able to try out these things in kind of a safe space before carrying them forward. Next slide. So what does this look like after the course? I'm excited to say that actually numerous students are carrying these policies forward right now. As you can see here, we have one student from this past semester who bill, as he wrote it in our course, is currently pending in the Hawaii House of Representatives. He and I have stayed in touch, and he's closely working with a couple of animal organizations that I was able to make introductions to. And I think that's another big piece of this course, if it wasn't already clear. Um, I am really invested in the students and making sure that I'm supporting each of them in doing this work, if that is what they want to do. So making introductions, our guest speakers remain in touch with the students. I'm remaining accessible to students because at the end of the day, we're all advocates. We all want a better world for animals. And this course creates a community for us to collaborate together, work together. And I think one of the most rewarding things for me was, having worked in this field for some time now, being able to hear the students think about these problems, and in some case real tragedies, in different creative ways, and then empower those students to move forward as advocates, to help animals. So I really want to emphasize that if you're thinking that this would just be a pause from the work that you're already doing, I actually think it's a complement, and it can be a great way to make it so that you have even more skills, connections, network, to move forward in this advocacy work. Next slide. All right, and with that, I'm going to, I believe, turn it back over to Professor Reddy.
Thanks so much, Professor Crowell. That was a great sort of overview and insights into your course and the real value of it. So just turning now to an overview of the program. So as I mentioned, we have our two advanced degrees. The first one is the Animal Law LLM, which is designed for US and international law graduates and attorneys. And as the slide notes, it's useful for those who want to do animal law practice, whether that's post right after they've obtained their JD or after they've practiced for a few years and want to specialize now. We also have graduates who move on to teaching, who do sort of academic research and work for policymakers, think tanks, and the like. Um, we also have the LLM as an option both for in-person and online. In terms of requirements for the LLM, what's required is that you have to have a degree that allows you to practice, whether that's a lawyer or as a judge in your home country. And so for the US and Canada, for example, that's the JD, and many other countries, that's an LLB. We do not require an LSAT or GRE. However, for international candidates whose primary language of instruction or first language is not English, they have to demonstrate proficiency in English, and captured here on the slides are the metrics that they would have to meet. In terms of the application itself, we really look at the applicant's sort of scholarly capacity, their skills, their experience as a lawyer or advocate more generally, their academics as contemplated by publications uh, or on their transcript grades specifically. We also look at work history. We require letters of recommendation, so the strength of those references are particularly helpful, and engagement with animal law issues, and that need not be having a particular job in the animal law field, um, but it could actually be something like volunteering, whether that's for a local rescue, having done sort of wildlife rehabilitation. We have candidates with experience in a vast variety of realms. With respect to the MSL, this is a degree designed for bachelor's degree holders, regardless of what field that bachelor's degree is in. And we have graduates who have also gone into teaching, research, academia, advocacy, and policy, and more. And as Professor Kroboth mentioned, a number of our students really focus on legislation and lobbying, and we're seeing them affect change in a number of jurisdictions. And like our LLM program, this program is available both in person and online. Um, and reflecting in many ways the requirements for the LLM, um, we see those requirements here. The distinctions again are that for the MSL, one need not have a degree that allows them to practice law. Rather, what's required is that they have a bachelor's degree. Again, no LSAT or GRE is required. The same English proficiency requirements specific to the LLM also apply to the MSL. Here, because candidates would not necessarily have been practicing law, that's not something that we really look at. but we still look for a lot of the same markers, the applicant's scholarly capacity, academic performance, work history, strength of references, recommendations, and even if they aren't engaged with animal law issues per se, animal advocacy or related issues is something that we look for. Um, and as Professor Kowalk mentioned, the online LLM and MSL programs are asynchronous and part-time. Candidates usually take between 6 and 8 credits each term, and going through the normal course of the program, graduate in 4 terms. And if one were to start, let's just say in fall of 25, continue to spring of 26, summer 26, they would graduate at the end of fall 26. So 4 terms. Um, and the application materials are required for both programs, statement of interest, usually I think 500 words, so a page or two, a writing sample, and that writing sample need not be specific to animal law or animals at all, but it needs to demonstrate, the candidate's sort of scholarly capacity, the ability to think critically, to write analytically. Um, Candidates also must submit a resume or CV, transcripts from all institutions of higher education, even if they did not receive a degree from that institution, at least one letter of recommendation. And again, for international candidates, they have to demonstrate proficiency in English if English was not their first language, or if English was not the mode in which they received their legal instruction. So in terms of program costs and scholarships, Professor Senatori, is this you?
This one is you, but I'm happy to
Oh,
start
okay,
there.
okay.
Yeah, either way.
So tuition is updated each summer, and so for this current academic year, the costs are approximately $2,200 per academic credit. And again, to receive the degree, candidates must obtain 26 credits by the end of the program. We are really proud to be able to offer both full and partial scholarships to well-qualified candidates. And all candidates who submit their applications by the application deadline are considered automatically for both full and partial scholarship support. So there's no additional sort of steps or application materials required. So with that said, Professor Senatori, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. And we will come back to some additional information about scholarships after this part of the presentation. I'd like to thank Professor Crowboth. Your course sounds amazing, and I would like to take it. For those of you who are joining us or watching this recording and you're interested in our in-person program, I also wanted to emphasize that animal law legislation and lobbying has been a long-standing course in our in-person program, and it is taught there by Professor Russ Mead, who also has a similarly practical approach to the course, and he is a former general counsel to Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. So you can also take that course in person if you study with us. So I just wanted to feature a few of our alumni in action. As Professor Reddy mentioned, we have alumni and students from all over the world. We currently have alumni from 30 different countries. I'm featuring just a few here from different geographic regions. And you can see all of our alumni in action on our website. I'll add some of those links into the chat when we start the question and answer. So with that, if you could advance the slide. So Diego Plaza is one of our LLM alumni from 2020. He is from Chile. And he has been one of our CAL's global ambassadors. We have a global ambassador program that is designed to feature and enhance the work of our students after they graduate and go out into the world. They come up with individualized projects that they do, and they're eligible for grants from CAL's to effectuate that work. Diego has been selected 3 times for that honor because of the work that he has been doing. He has also founded a nonprofit, 2 of them in Chile. One is the Center for Chilean Animal Law Studies, and the other is the Interspecies Justice Foundation. He founded those during his studies with us in the LLM program. Diego and many of our alumni also go on to either expand animal law in their countries or to start it there. And Diego has done that. One of his CAL's ambassador projects was to create a specialized tuition-free course on Chilean animal law. He also, in an earlier iteration of his global ambassador project, I believe it was his second, was the author and academic contributor of a dossier of animal studies that featured works from 18 authors from a variety of countries. So that's a bit about Diego. Next slide. Ever Vimbai Chinoda is one of our alumni from Zimbabwe, and she received her LLM from us in 2017. Another really cool aspect of the work that our students do is many of them, like Diego, as I mentioned, go on to start nonprofit organizations, and Ever is also one of those alumni who has done so. She founded and is a co-director of SOFA, which is Speak Out for Animals, and they're doing all kinds of incredible work throughout Zimbabwe. And she also created and is teaching the first ever wildlife course in Zimbabwe at the Great Zimbabwe University. Through the work that she's done with SOFA, she's facilitated the training of 20 lawyers and 60 prosecutors on animal laws, and that number is growing all the time. So Ever is really doing incredible work on animal law in Zimbabwe. If you can feature the next one. Cynthia von Schlichten is one of our alumni from the United States, and Cynthia is actually also an adjunct professor in our online program. So if you study with us, she teaches the nonprofit law course that's offered in the online program. And she is also general counsel at Farm Sanctuary, which is a US-based animal rights nonprofit. So that's a bit about Cynthia. Kashevni Nayangaru is from Malaysia, and she is a recent MSL alumni. She has recently, in the fall, begun work as the producer engagement coordinator at Global Food Partners. And Kesh has a real passion for transforming the food system. And through her work at GFP, she is leading coordination efforts across 7 countries in Asia, advancing their producer engagement initiatives to support cage-free farming transitions. So that's a bit about Kesh. You can go to the next slide. So I'd like to talk a little bit about scholarships. As Professor Reddy noted, everybody who applies to our program, whether in person or online, is automatically considered for scholarships. There is no separate step required. What happens is in that statement of interest that you provide as part of your application materials, that's what's used to evaluate, in addition to all of the other materials, scholarship opportunities. If you could go to the next slide. As Professor Reddy also mentioned, we have full and partial scholarships. I am going to talk today about 2 specific named scholarships, but before doing so, I just wanted to emphasize that we have a wide variety of scholarships that are available. Many of them are funded by anonymous donors, so they aren't advertised with specific requirements, but they are awarded to people who have demonstrated commitment, excellence to animal law and animal protection work. And though I'll talk about 2 named ones, I just want to be clear that those are not the only scholarships that we provide. So with that, I'll talk about 2 of our named scholarship opportunities. So this first one is a new scholarship that was launched last summer, and it was created by an anonymous donor who was inspired by the story and the life of Thomas Bloom Raskin, and she created this scholarship in his honor. For those who don't know Tommy's story, he is the son of Representative Jamie Raskin and law professor Sarah Bloom Raskin, and he was a committed animal advocate. He was a Harvard law student, and he worked at Mercy for Animals at the time that he sadly passed away. His story was really featured at the time because of his passion for animals, and this donor created a scholarship in his honor. The scholarship is for LLM students. It is for either in-person or online study, and it is a $10,000 award towards tuition. Tommy was exceedingly passionate about farmed animal protection, and that's an area that's very near and dear to us here at CALS as well. We do all kinds of work on farmed animal advocacy. So for this particular scholarship, while any animal law passion is welcome, there is a priority for applicants who are passionate about making a difference for farmed animals. For this scholarship, also, I just wanted to emphasize that if a student is awarded this scholarship, because it's not a full scholarship, they would also be eligible for other scholarship opportunities as well. So that is the scholarship in honor of Thomas Bloom Raskin. We also have another donor who is very passionate about animal testing and research and finding alternatives. And this scholarship, the William C. Borst Anti-Vivisection Scholarship, is for an animal law LLM or MSL student who is passionate about a career in anti-vivisection work, whether that is in law or policy or advocacy or teaching, anything falling within that umbrella. This one is a full scholarship. And as with the other ones that I've noted, you would put your basis and your background and your passion for these issues into your statement of interest to be considered. As with the other ones, this is an in-person or online scholarship, and this one is for both, as I noted, LLM or MSL students. If you go to the next one. Before we go on to the Q&A, you can stay connected with us at the Center for Animal Law Studies, learn about conferences, webinars, events, the Animal Law Conference that Professor Reddy talked about. We have a quarterly newsletter. These are the social media platforms that we're on, and you can also sign up for our newsletter. So with that, we have plenty of time available for questions, and I will moderate the question and answer session. I'll welcome back Professors Kroboth and Reddy. You are welcome to ask us questions about Professor Kroboth's course, her presentation, anything about application, admissions, scholarships. All three of us teach courses. Professor Kroboth and I teach in the online program, and Professor Reddy teaches in both in-person and online programs. So you can just add your questions into the chat and I will go there now. Okay, so the first question, and I will direct this one to you, Professor Reddy. The questioner asks, the writing sample is journalistic rather than a research paper. Will that be sufficient, and should the applicant submit multiple articles?
Yes, that's a great question. We have on our website a general range for papers for the writing sample. And so, 15 to 30 pages is usually kind of what we're looking for. We have had a number of candidates who are journalists, and they have submitted, those journalism pieces, and that's been fine. What I will say is that, in reviewing those, the admissions committee is really looking for the articles to offer sort of rigorous analysis and insights, and so we'll be paying attention to those in particular. And so to answer again the question, yes, a candidate is welcome to submit multiple articles to meet the sort of the minimum requirement for the writing sample.
Great, thank you, Professor Reddy. Staying on the topic of writing samples, where can the writing samples be found is what this person is asking.
And so I may be misunderstanding the question, but
That's what
the writing samples.
Yeah, go ahead. That's what the question said directly. So there, if the person would like to offer some clarification, you can do that as well. Apologies for interrupting.
No, that's great. Most candidates in their applications include writing samples that they have used for example, a paper-based class in either their undergraduate education or their JD or their LLB. So oftentimes it's just a scholarly or academic piece that they've written as part of their degree program before coming to Lewis and Clark. But it need not be. It could be something that's written after they've graduated as well.
Great, thank you. A question about the timing of completion of the LLM program. Can the LLM program be completed in 1 year?
The answer to that question is for our in-person program, the in-person program is designed, whether it's for the LLM or the MSL, it is designed, both are to be completed within a single year. So starting with the in-person program, we admit only for the fall. So only fall starts. And so students who come in the fall will usually graduate by the end of spring, and that would be May of the following calendar year. Some students in the in-person program prolong their studies by maybe that summer. And so that would still be within one sort of calendar year. Uh, so that's the answer for the in-person program. The online program, with respect to both the LLM and MSL, students can start in the fall term or the spring term, and it is possible to graduate within 1 year if we're including sort of fall, spring, and summer. And um, most students in the online program may have full-time jobs or other sort of commitments, and so that's less the case, but it's certainly doable. And I think almost every academic year we have one student who does complete the program, again within sort of 3 terms, so fall, spring, and summer.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. I'm going to go ahead and answer one of the people in the chat had asked the question about whether it's still possible to apply for the in-person advanced degree programs. And yes, it absolutely is. We have synced up the application deadline of both the in-person and the online advanced degree program. So for fall of 2025, both of those deadlines are now May 1st. So whether you're interested in joining us in person or online, May 1st is now the deadline for fall of 2025. Do we know yet, Professor Reddy, what the deadline will be if someone is interested in starting the online program in spring of 2026? Do we know what that one will
Spring,
be?
spring of 2026, it's early or mid-November.
Okay, so that one will come in the fall, but for fall 2025, start in person or online, whether LLM or MSL, May 1st is the deadline. One of the questions is this individual is interested in pursuing a double major while concurrently working on an LLM in environmental law, and they're wondering whether that is possible and looking for any guidance.
So the question is it possible to do an LLM in animal law and an LLM in environmental law? I think the answer to that question is yes. There is, if you are seeking to do that at Lewis and Clark, we have, a really robust environmental law LLM program in addition to our, really robust animal law LLM program. Technically, a student can't be in both programs at the same time at Lewis and Clark, but if one were to be obtaining their LLM elsewhere and wants to concurrently obtain their LLM in animal law at Lewis and Clark, that's certainly possible. Another sort of caveat is that we do have some students who have completed one of the LLMs, whether it's the animal law LLM or the environmental law LLM, and then want to undertake the other LLM offered at Lewis and Clark. And what our programs have been able to do historically is allow up to 8 credits to sort of count towards both degree programs. And so one could complete the, let's just say, animal law LLM, and then take 8 credits from that program and apply it to the environmental law LLM.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. The next question is for you, Professor Kroboth. The person would like to know whether your course provides general instruction on principles of how to develop good public policy, for example, within narrowing proposed policy or policy versus politics.
Yeah, I think that question goes to feasibility. In other words, before jumping into drafting or discussing how to lobby to pass something, is there a discussion of the feasibility of the idea? And I would say yes, quite a bit, actually. There are assignments where students get feedback about whether this is something that's worth pursuing. Then we explore other options. There are a few tools throughout the course as well that are sort of rubrics to help students quantify pros and cons for various options before moving forward. So there's a long-winded yes to that question.
Thank you, Professor Crowell. A question about someone whose current practice is transactional, and they're wondering, how would you recommend finding an opportunity to prepare a new writing sample? So they're doing transactional work such that there's not necessarily a writing sample that would be already existing.
Yeah, we have had candidates who have gone back to their JD or LLB program of study from, even a decade before and used that writing sample. And that would be appropriate if this candidate has one. But if the question is, I don't have a writing sample even from my previous studies that would sort of meet this requirement or what the admissions committee is looking for, we do have quite a few applicants who, you know, they're interested in a particular area of law, a particular area of practice, whether that's, wildlife or companion animals or aquatic animals, and they'll write a paper, 12, 15 pages to submit as a writing sample. And that's, in some ways very helpful for the admissions committee to see that this person is, really invested in this particular issue. But candidates need not, write something new as part of their application.
Great, thank you, Professor Reddy. Switch gears to a financial issue, and then we've got several questions that relate to applications, so we'll take them separately. The person would like to know if there are financial options available other than scholarships.
The answer is yes. The vast majority of our students in the program who matriculate do receive either a full or partial scholarship. In addition, a number of our US candidates are able to secure federal financial aid. And so those are the two sort of primary means by which students fund their study, in addition to any potential sort of resources that they individually have. I will also say some candidates, both for the in-person and the online programs, are able to find the particular organization or sort of corporate entity who's willing to sort of sponsor them. And sometimes that's their own employers. So there are potential options to look into there as well.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. This question it says, often professional experience is considered in course qualifications, for example, degree programs. Is that a possibility for the MSL program?
I'm not sure. What's
I had the same question. I think, and if the person who asked the question wants to clarify it, you're welcome to do so. I think what they're asking is, do our courses take into account different professional experience or disciplines? Because the question is directed at course qualifications as opposed to admission.
Sure. We have in our MSL program candidates with very, very diverse backgrounds. And for example, Professor Senatori teaches a veterinary animal law course, and we have veterinarians who express in their application that that's one of their primary areas of interest. And so they necessarily, are excited about taking Professor Senatori's course. And, we have, candidates who are interested in entomology, and so they might take my insect law course. And every student sort of brings to the course, based upon their background, their history, their work experience, uh, knowledge that is, oftentimes beyond that of their professors, their peers, and it all adds to a really robust learning environment.
And Professor Corboth, if I could direct that question to you too, because I know you've had, and I have as well, both law professionals and non-law professionals in your courses. Can you also speak to how that enhances the environment in the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo what Professor Reddy shared and say, in addition, it also creates kind of a community, so to speak, amidst the students. I think that having all of these diverse backgrounds brought together and folks pursuing different degrees as well, because we have both LLM students and MSL students in my course, allows for a lot more creative thinking. It allows for kind of the black hatting, so to speak, or devil's advocate. And it's something I really enjoyed as a professor to see, is how folks were challenging one another in really respectful and meaningful ways to hone in on the policies that they were working through.
Thank you. And I echo the same thing. And I also just want to note, even amongst lawyers who are in the courses, we all come from very different professional backgrounds. I was a litigator for 20 years. I know one of the other people who asked a question is a transactional lawyer. So even within lawyers, we're bringing all different backgrounds and experiences and training into the classroom. And I think that it really enhances our courses and animal law advocacy generally.
And let me just add really quickly,
Yeah.
with regard to sort of other sort of experiential sort of opportunities in our in-person program. We offer both for the LLM and the MSL students to undertake externships for course or academic credit. And so, for example, uh, a US LLM who's in the in-person program may be able to take up to 12 credits towards the completion of their degree requirements. MSLs in the in-person program are able to, in their second semester of study, take up to 6 credits of an externship type experience. And that would basically involve, working within, for example, a nonprofit or a law firm, undertaking sort of legal research, legal writing, um, uh, the construction of memos and the like under the guidance of an attorney. And again, accruing credit towards the MSL degree that way. Um, for international students, whether they're LLM or MSL students in the in-person program, uh, visa stipulations do prohibit uh, undertaking externship credits towards the degree within or during their first year of studying. Because the program is mostly 1 year, our international candidates generally don't undertake externship credits.
Thank you. This one has a couple of questions in it, so I'm going to take them one at a time. The first one I'll answer and invite you to add to, Professor Reddy. So the person is asking, how much weight does the GPA hold in the application process for non-traditional students? This person received their undergraduate degree in 2013. So I'll turn it over to you, but I do want to note one thing, which is we have a lot of people, particularly in the online program, that are in second careers. We have someone who's currently a CALS ambassador who received her MSL degree as in what she calls her bonus career. She had actually retired from a full career. So we have all kinds of people in this category, and we invite those applications. They bring a wonderful wealth of experience to the program. But with that, I'll let you answer the specific question, Professor Reddy. How much weight does the GPA hold?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And for candidates who graduated, some time ago, we put less weight on the grades and on the transcript, and more on sort of work experience and the letters of recommendation, the statement of interest, the writing sample. And so some candidates also elect to explain, I had a particularly rough semester. I was going through this, and that, helps explain why my GPA is what it is from, my BA degree from, 15 or 20 years ago. And that's really helpful for the committee to know, and it just helps put everything in perspective. So if there's anything about your candidacy that you're unsure about or have some anxiety as to, just speaking to it in your statement of interest or a sort of an additional supplementary attachment is helpful.
An additional question about applications is for writing samples, is a 6-page paper acceptable? And if they don't have something of that with a different length, should they prepare something different?
Yeah, I mean, a 6-page writing sample is a bit short and a bit shorter than what we're looking for. However, if it's demonstrative of the ability to think critically and write analytically, that might sort of overcome that particular sort of hurdle. But I think generally a minimum that we see in terms of page length is 12 to 15 pages, and some candidates submit pieces of up to 25, 35, 40 pages.
Thank you. A questioner asks whether there is an application fee to apply.
No, there isn't an application fee to apply. We have, yeah, there's no application fee to apply.
Another attendee is asking whether it's possible to request a deferral on admission if they're admitted in fall of 2025.
Yes, we have quite often candidates who will be admitted, and for whatever reason, they're not ready to start the program within or for the semester that they've applied for. So they can elect to defer up to one sort of semester. The sort of caveat there is whenever you apply and you're admitted, the admissions committee will convey what your scholarship package is if you receive one, so full or partial. But if a candidate elects to defer, that scholarship package doesn't necessarily defer as well, but that candidate would be considered for scholarship support in whatever semester that they're looking to start the program.
Great, thank you for that, Professor Reddy. I have two questions that I'm kind of going to take together. The two people are asking whether we help our graduates find jobs in the industry, particularly for students who haven't worked in the field, and whether we track, for example, the income that alumni make after they graduate, anything like that granular.
We don't track their income. And one of the particular sort of difficulties in this realm is that we have candidates, as sort of I mentioned with respect to that slide, candidates in so many different countries. So the numerics just don't necessarily translate. So we don't capture that data, but we do, or we have been holding both for the in-person and online programs, a career and networking and other types of professional development events. We, for example, this past fall, hosted a webinar with I think 4 panels, and when you came into that event, you could select which panel you wanted to attend, and each panel had 3 or 4 alumni from the program. So one panel was focused on graduates who are working on wildlife issues. Another panel was focused on people who are working in the field of research and testing. Another panel on farmed animal issues and the like. And so in addition to putting on sort of those events for students, we also have a really robust career services department here at Lewis and Clark, and they, in addition to some of your professors, would be happy to review your resume, your cover letter, and the like. And I think, as Professor Corboth mentioned, getting started with the AABA, the American Bar Association's Tips Animal Law Committee. It's a great place to network and to find out, who's doing what work, how you can get involved. And getting involved as a student, I think, is really important to securing placements later on. And the last thing I'll say is that we also, for our students, have a animal law sort of Slack channel, which has sort of sub channels dedicated to opportunities for publications, for presentations, conference presentations, internships and externships, and jobs as well. So we keep sort of a bank of that information for candidates to look at.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. And I had promised to add into the chat an alumni in action link for the LLMs and for their MSLs. I'm going to add our current students link because we are building the alumni in action link for them, as that one is a new program. So both of those are there, and you can get an example there of the type of work that our alumni are doing in animal law. So we are coming towards the end of our time together. I'm just gonna see if we can fit in maybe 2 more questions, and then I'll turn it over to you, Professor Reddy, to close us out. But there are 2 questions that sort of are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One is wondering whether it's possible to basically underload or take one unit at a time, so doing a lower load than usual. And then another student is asking the opposite, which is if online students were to be an online student, if they could then change to come in person so that they could experience the externship possibility. So basically they complete the 1 year program, the MSL part, and then come and like do an externship. So kind of 2 ends of the spectrum there.
Um, I would recommend for that question regarding the externship to send me an email, and you can find my email on the website, just so I'm sure I'm answering sort of the specific question sort of being asked. And a number of our candidates, whether it's for, family reasons, other obligations, work obligations, they need to underload, and usually candidates will underload by one course. Um, but the basic sort of progression is 2 or 3 courses towards the degree. The first semester, I should note, students are expected to take, if they are an international LLM or an MSL candidate, they're required to take an Introduction to U.S. Legal Studies course, which opens for fall start candidates 2 weeks before the regular fall semester. And so hopefully most candidates are able to complete the course requirements in that window. But in that first semester, they're required to take that class and our Animal Law Fundamentals Survey course. So with the exception of that first semester, yes, it's certainly possible to underload the following semesters.
Okay, final 2 questions here. One is it okay to submit more than 1 letter of recommendation?
It certainly is. Yeah, we have candidates who do that, and that's fine. I think 2 though would probably be the max.
Great, thank you. And then final question, Professor Reddy, and I'll turn it over to you. For the online program, are there multiple admissions a year? And if so, what are the admissions periods?
So for a fall start, the admission deadline is May 1st, and for a spring start, the admission deadline is approximately November 1st or November 15th.
And then just to underscore for those who are watching this and interested in the in-person program, we have 1 admission period per year. It is in the fall, with the application deadline this year for fall of 2025 being May 1st. And it'll just check back if you're looking for a future year. It's usually around those times. Going forward, the specific date may change. So with that, Professor Reddy, I'll turn it over to you to close us out.
Yes, well, thank you all for taking the time to be with us, and a special thanks to Professor Koboth and Professor Senatori for their wonderful insights and discussion of this substantive area of legislation and lobbying for animals. If you have any questions regarding either the MSL or LLM programs, please don't hesitate to find my email on the website. It is rajreddy@lclark.edu. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, everyone.